que hubachik was muy man put it kaham. Um, there's that when it guys good hubachik means good wind or good breath or good air blessings. Mambachi in the autumn language. If you look at the language a long time ago, if you look at the documents in the language mahastrig and the dictionaries that were published, um, there is a lot of words in there. And how they would say things. Some of those things you don't find in the old documents. You only find them in the newer documents, like the 1960s, and you know. So a lot of these, like there's no word for hello in autumn, and whenever I meet people and whatever, they'll ask me, how do you greet each other? And I'll just say, hey, Camillus, what are you doing? And you know, that's generally the greeting, I guess, because we really didn't have any formal greetings a long time ago. And there was no like having need to say something. How much nowadays, I think, with the influence from the European invasion, it becomes like you have to say something. So, bimasache, that means you might be mad or whatever, but it really had nothing to do with that. It's more like how do I um, greet or how do I look upon people, and so. But how did Autumn do that a long time ago? There's a lot of different um, arguments about how that happened. But when you look at the documents or when you look at the elders and when you speak the language, the what the how do you say, what they call the greeting so much, how the autumn used to do that a long time ago. Um, First of all, in our language there's two genders, a male and a female, and Chiwitamakai made those two, male, female, and later on Itoi made those two, male, female. And so that's how this whole language thing, how do you say, to divide the speech like that. Um, there was like certain things that males did, certain things that females did that were, how do you say, ghost of what their assignment was in life or how they did things. And those words, Manyabak, that they're very different from what we understand him nowadays with the American understanding or that thought process in our mind. So, but so there's a word for male and the word for female, but there are also many other words that describe male and many other words that describe female, um, as far as like a person, like a gender. Okay, so the first one, male, um, you say chioch, chioch, chioch. That's the way to say a male. It doesn't matter whether a male is older or younger, or like an old man or a young man. You say chioch, that just means a male. Just a regular male. No, it doesn't define. So if you say that the chioch was walking by, the next question would be, well, how old was he, or was he, like a baby or what? Because in Mirigan they categorize a lot of stuff, like child, boy, girl. There's a lot of them, but for autumn there's just older and younger. So chioch is the for the boy. That's how they most dialects say that chioch. There's a dialect mostly in like Hill River and Gamepop towards San Javier, or kind of like on the river. People on the river are happy to give. But San Javier is actually river people because the Santa Cruz River's right there. They're Akimorata. They just got adopted into TO because they were close and the relatives that lived there, people that went there. So, but they say George, George, some of them, George. So you might hear George or you might hear George. Nothing wrong with it, it's just a dialect difference. Now, the female is oh, 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 oh. That's how you say female. Generally, most dialects use that to get that. Oh, um, in the other dialects like in Papua, Kikimai and Huhuish and Huhura and Hiachet and some of Ila River, mostly like in Comat area and down into Beach, they would say oof. Now that's a sound that in the languages, when you look at Hill Alvarez or when you look at the Saxton writing, they don't use a V for whatever reason, and yet people talk like that. Well, the reason is I think that's because their dictionary, um, their writing, they got it from a certain dialect, but they didn't include the whole, and that's why I keep saying you can't say this is an autumn thing because if there's an autumn ceremony, it's generally one set of rules, but then there's differences depending on the community and the dialects. So Ugamam, that side, they would say oof. Now it can be an F or a V. It doesn't matter to me. Um, Sometimes some teachers will say, like if you speak with a V when you write it, you still write a W even though you speak with a V. And yet it's in our language, in autumn language. So they would say oof, oof, compared to oof, oof. Nothing wrong with that. They're both correct. Um, but again, when you picture that, you have to check with your dialect or your family, and then use that dialect. But it indicates when somebody talks like that and they will use a V or an F sound, um, oof, then it indicates that which dialect they're from, where their original homeland is. So again, that's the only real. I think the reason that Itoi gave us the dialects was that that it would change. So and George, oof, oof, George. So those are the two separate, male and female. Oof, George. So that's something that you have to remember when you're talking about Dida. And I'm talking about Imik. What is Imik? When you say to a male or female an Imik, then you have to use that particular. It has to be the male or the female, depending on who you're talking to. So Imik. People don't really know these things, so a lot of times they use the Spanish or the English, uncle, my uncle, and my auntie, or my grandma or grandpa, whatever. No, but it's real easy. You just have to practice it. And like I keep saying, if you say something over and over again, you'll get good at it. These kids that are good at basketball, soccer, football, whatever, that's because they practice. So same thing. You practice the language. So um, the the way that Mohasma Bachichik Haichu, when you talk with somebody, the imik is actually the way that people used to say hello a long time ago. There was no word for hello, and so when people met each other, they would do that. Ba'im, they call it ba'im. Imik means my relations. How am I related to you? There are some elder people that will say that Buganim, don't just call me grandma or whatever. Buganim, use the autumn imig, that's the autumn that proves that. And when you use that autumn imig, it's kind of like you're saying that you're a part of this culture because you're using that. I was at at Bashas, I think it was, and this girl came, and she had her kids, and her kids were playing over there by the chips or whatever, and she called them and she said, "Come here, come here." She said, "Give your abuelo a hug." And I looked around like, who? I think they're talking about me. And I was like, what? And she just said, "Give him a hug." And they all came and gave me a hug. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's your abuela. And I said, no, I'm not. And then the conversation went on, and I just, Masapo, if that's what she's going to do. But I know this girl, I know this, the boy, the one that is the father to those kids. No, not a drop of Spanish blood, but they're using that higi. So again, people, for whatever reason, they say your tío or tía, whatever, pipi machig, imig, and so they copy what the Spaniards say, or the Hispanics say. Um, there's also the American grandma, grandpa, but in the ODHAM IHMIG, there is a certain type of a way to say something for each one of those positions. Now, I thought we were the only ones. Found out from one of my friends, she's an Indonesian, that, well, because they came from China and went to Indonesia to live over there during some kind of a movement, but they're actually Chinese, and so she was saying that they call their older aunt Ama, and their younger aunt Be. So I went out and I started asking, what about this person, the older uncle, the younger, on the mother's side, and it does the same exact thing that all of them have. It's just that they call them different. When you say in Spanish tío, it's just uncle, but it doesn't say it's on the mother's side or father's side. And for all of them, it's important, mother's side or father's side. Um, and then when you say tía or abuelo or abuelita, those things, you're actually saying that, but it doesn't say again which side of the family it says. But in autumn, we have to know those things, so because of that's the way that the IHMIG is presented or is used. And again, that's how in the olden days, how people used to say their hellos. So agi matabaim. Somebody said there was no good morning, no good evening, no, there's nothing like that a long, long time ago. But when I see my uncle and I say nya tatar, or you say nya chisk or something, I mean that's the woman part. Anyway, so when I say that the IHMIG, that means hello. You're recognizing. But in the IHMIG, when I say Yawask, that person is supposed to turn around and say how I'm related to them. So you say Yawask, they would say Yawasamat. So there's that back and forth, and that was in the old and long time ago. That was the IHMIG. Now we're going to start with this IHMIG with brother and sister, because that's a good place to start. But when you say me, Ani, Ani, it's very rare that Ani, you kind of like speak about yourself. Ani, that's me. But there's a center point in when you were born. What was the time you were born, the day, and what is older, what is in your future, and what is on your past, and what is in your future, what is younger. So you're walking that way where you step the future. When you step that way, it becomes the past, but there's still another future. So again, you're still moving as time moves on. So either this older and younger is the next thing that happens in the ODHAM IHMIG cycle. Is that when somebody is older, they have a little bit more respect because they've been longer on this earth. So there is a way to say that. And now we say brothers and sisters, but in the olden days, there were two words that they would use that was kind of like an honoring thing, and at the same time a recognition of who you were. So these two words, the older person, don't matter what date or what. If somebody is older than you from the marking of your birth date, where you mark it and then you start moving. If somebody was born before you, then they're older than you. Then you call them cease, cease, s cease. It's like when somebody's like you say in English, uh, that person sees that dog, cease, like that cease. So that's that word, cease. So when you see somebody that's older, then you say cease, 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 my older whatever, and you cease. And again, I would say cease in other dialects. They would say cease, cease, or cease, or cease. But that just means my, So cease, cease is the word for older. So you look around, if you see somebody that's older than you are, that's the word to use. Cease. It doesn't matter whether related to you or not. The younger ones, they call it Yeshubich. Yeshubich. Autumn sh sh p j j with the j. Some people they recognize the j. It has a ch sound, ch, but it's a j, j like Josh and Josh, Josh and Josh. People just choose whatever, even though the actual Josh comes from with the D, Dios. But anyway, so the boogie that matters. Shubich, shubich, shubich. So if you look around and you see somebody that is younger than you, that is your shubich, tome shubich. And a lot of times people would say, or the elders, a long time ago, would recognize two kids, and they would say, "Here got shubich, the guitasi suke, the guitasi sukam." That's the older one, that's the younger one. Shubich, cease. That's something that I think when we go into IHMIG classes, they don't recognize or they don't talk about. Himdag. So in your shubich and your cease, that's one way. And this is and cease is always the elder. That's how in Gila River, in those like in Chucho and those places where they call ito su'a, that's where that came from. Su'a, nisisi, nisisi. They would say to recognize that nisisi, nishu'a, 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 su'a, su'a. That's how that word became. It means elder brother. Nisis, nishu'a. So, shu'a. So, um, that the word to give me about the cease. So that's just any no don't matter what gender you're male female, you say you should put on your cease. You know, I am older than my wife, so she is my shupich, if you want to look at it that way. So you can say, and a lot of times, a long time ago, when people would talk, it was the older one that made the decision. That's why there's a key, the decision maker in most families is the older male. That went out of the way a long time ago. But a long time ago, it was the oldest male that was the one that everybody looked to make that decision. Now, the next thing is the male. Shrama'aga, you see, there's a word that we use now that everybody recognizes as the word friend. That's nawach, nawach, navich, navach, navich, navich, nawach. That's that recognition of that word. But in the olden days, in the old text, or how that word is recognized, it's not friend, it's brother. Brother is the word for nawach. That's how they used to say that a long time ago. The nawach, the nawach. It wasn't friend, but when the white man started coming around and the Mexicans and all those and the congressmen and all those came around and they asked, "How do you say friend?" In autumn, there was no word, so they just picked the closest word, one that was there, which is brother. It's kind of like in the black race, they say, "Hey, my brother," or in the Hispanic, race, "Hey, my brother." It's kind of like that. Um, but in the autumn sense, or when they were saying that, they would say, uh, because they were generally talking to males, because a long time ago the people that were running the government or the thing, they would go to them and talk to them. The paternal culture autumn, so they would say um, Ninawach, and so that became the word for what they call now for friend. But again, a long time ago, Ninawach means male relative, male brother. So again, you have to recognize that. Now, you can still say a friend. There's nothing wrong with it. But again, when you guys that it's generally in the autumn text of long time ago, um, you don't find that word except when you're talking to your brother. Like in the myths, they talk about something happened to somebody's brother. Say you know. Then you think, so he's not his brother. I thought he was his brother, but they're just saying this is his friend. No, a long time ago that was the word for brother. So that's brother. Um, and the other part was that your brother, I have my brothers. You know, my mom and dad had us, and we have brothers. But the word for cousin, we don't have a word for cousin. There is no word for cousin. Cousin. Now we say it how much because there's a definition, Milligan definition, and we have to say it that way. But a long time ago, there was no word for cousin. So what did you call your cousins? Again, they're just brothers, male brothers. Donyanawach. So I can say Nyanawach to either like Terrence or Ted, uh, Louis, Tony, all those. More than now. But also Kanumuk on my mom's side, but Nyanawach. There's just that. They're just my cousins. But again, there's no word for that, knowledge. So that's the male, the knowledge. The female is, um, again, taking on the word uch or uf. Um, you take that word and you say, ni uika, uika, ni uika, ni ufka, ni ufik. That's how people say your sister. So in uika, when you translate it into autumn, you're saying girl or my the girl belongs to me, kind of like that. It belongs to me, like when I say nimaginaga, nikoksika, rabiska, computer ga. It belongs to me. So the uika is my girl. So that's how they said it a long time ago. Ito den uika, ni ufka, ito den ufka, ito den ufpik. So that's how they say sister a long time ago. So Nawach, ni uika, those are the old words that they used to use again in the IHMIG. So if I say to my sister, ni uika, or my girl cousin, if I saw Sylvia someplace, I could say, ni uika, she would return that greeting, that IHMIG, and she would say, ni nawach. So again, back and forth. It's like a recognition of who the person is, you know. So, ni uika, ni nawach, those are the two. But there's other ways to say brother and sister. That are not really, how do you say, tied to a gender, because you would say nawach to a boy and to a girl you would say uika. In the in that you can shorten it up, and instead of saying those you would say nyuanak, wanak, wanak, nyuanak. So that just means that you're with me. You're together with me. You're the same family as me. And like I said before in other recording, is that the old word for family now everybody says new familia, new familia, new familia. But a long time ago it was wormakar, wormakar. Those are with me. So this wornak means that this person's me. So I can say about again to my cousin Yasa Margo, I can say Modinyawanak, or I can say Nyuika, because that's what she is in the Autumn language. You know, Nyuika, Nyawanak, you know. So, but I can say the same word Wanak to my brother and other brother that maybe that I have. I don't know. I'm trying to think of somebody. Jason. You know, I can say Donyawanak because that's what they are. So, like I said, so I can call Rosie or Dory or Jason Nyawanak because that's what they are. But when it gets to gender, I have to say Jason is Nyanawach, and those Dory, Rosie, all those Dipuruchu, they're all my Uika, Ton Uika, Uika. So that's how they did that, Higi, in those days. And again, that was actually kind of like the greeting, the old autumn greeting, or how autumn used to use greetings, or how to say hello, hello. So again, Yasis is the older, Yashupich is the younger, Yanawach is the boy, Nyuika is the girl, and Yawanak is just what do you, that's kind of like how you said your brothers and sisters. So, and again, it's the cousins, the same thing. There is some little small terms about the younger boy on the male side. I don't know why there's a word for a little boy, like the youngest brother. They call it in a lot of dialects. They say surich, surich, surich. So you look for the youngest boy in the family, that little boy that's just really like oh cute, and you run and you say hasurich, surich, surich. There are some dialects that say tulich, tulich with the T, tulich. And there are some dialects that say tulip with a P, tulip. So, and that's just that little girl. Now, there's going to be a question after this, when I finish this, and so I'm going to head it off before they start. There's a word, chuhia. It just means little girl. It doesn't mean, it doesn't mean little girl just like cookie surich. It's different. The little girl is just the chuhia. Chuhia. It's not a title, it's just a descriptive word, whereas surich is more of a title that you call them that. So if you're introducing your friend, whatever, either in surich, you know, and then they look at him, oh, they right away they know, okay, that's the littlest brother. Better take care of him. Don't hurt him, because all those boys over there, they're all gonna come. So hoogie like that, you surich. So, and I'm kind of looking at my notes here, trying to about to mupi check to so that's the brothers and sisters in this imig. Now this is going to be the first, and then after that we're going to go into the like the male and female, but also jump to the top and then start going down from there, because it makes more sense I think, like that. So this is just the first part, the brothers and sisters, what you would call them in the autumn imig. And again, um, when the people do imig classes, they generally skip a lot. But I try to go through all the dictionaries and try to sit down and listen to in my mind how people address their brothers and sisters, and this is how I got this either. And there are some dictionaries that go through that, but they don't mention all these words, manipa'ak. So you might hear these words, whatever. But again, it's just Trosmachket. And also because I don't plan to be here for ever and ever, that hopefully this will stay someplace and then somebody can say, Atom cookie, or whatever. But again, there's no right and wrong in autumn. It's just a way that people do stuff that's different. Okay? All right, the more the maapoag next, I don't know, whenever I can. I'm just doing this, I'm doing my work, and then off to the side, I remember and I want to break off from my work. So this is my like my holiday from my work, is doing these videos and you know, stuff. Oi, no, and I'm not gonna see you. Ah, pimam I can't say Dominic because I'm not gonna see you. Maybe if I close my eyes and oh my god, I didn't want to see that. But you know, all right.